Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So I got good feedback on this, and I posted it a couple of days ago asking everybody what they'd thought about them and if they'd like to learn them. We're going to make a variation of these, and just to let you know up front, it just requires a lot of patience and a lot of material because you're going to be cutting a lot of wires. And if you notice down here, I've hammered my wires to create little paddles. So on the earring that we're going to make, we're going to add more paddles. So I'm going to give you the materials that you're going to need, and then we're going to talk about the bead here first, and then we'll make our earring. So if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I'm trying to build my page, and if you can, and you find it in your heart, if you could follow through the entire video, because that's how YouTube in their analyticals decides to share, so I'd really like to get this out there to all you wonderful wire artists. So let me flip my camera down so that you can see, and I'm going to hold this up for you. And these are the materials that you're going to need. I'm using 18 gauge round wire. I cut 8 pieces at 3/4 of an inch each, 4 at 1 inch each, 4 at 1 1/4, 4 at 1 1/2, and 2 at 1 3/4. You will need 2 jump rings, and your ear hoops, you can use 3 to 4 inches of wire depending on how big you want your hoop. So that's really important. And your bead to hang from the middle of the earring can be 4 to 6 millimeters. I believe this is a 5 millimeter bead. We're going to start with the bead first. Now let me just share a couple of things with you that are really important. Before you start doing a lot of cutting, a couple of things. You want to make sure that your bead hole is large enough, because I am going to be wrapping this bead just the way I wrap this one. And I'm going to show you everything here in a minute. So you want to make sure that your bead hole is large enough to fit over your 18 gauge wire. Okay, that's number one. Then if we're going to be adding beads to the earring, like I did here, and we're going to change this one up a little bit because I get bored making the same thing twice, okay? You want to make sure that if you're going to hammer your frame, which I'm going to do, and then again, I may not, because I had this idea regarding the beads about dropping the paddles in between a bead. So these are 2 millimeter copper beads with a 1 millimeter hole. So they're little tiny beads with pretty big holes. Okay, so here's what I was thinking. Now these aren't going to be in order yet. I'm going to show you how to paddle. But what I was thinking of is, instead of hammering the bottom, and I could still hammer it, but drop a bead in between each paddle. So what I'm doing right now is just giving you inspiration. I haven't done a trial on it yet, and I'm not sure I'm going to do that, but it's certainly something to consider. So let's get started. So you want to make sure that you cut all your materials, and I have already, and I'm going to show you here, because this is very time consuming. Okay, everybody? It's super beginner friendly. Anyone can do this. But as you can see, here's my 8 3/4 inches, and I've paddled the bottom of each. I've buffed and filed the bottom of each, and then I looped each one in. So that's my 8. Then here's my 4 1 inch. Did the same thing, and this is what makes it so time consuming. So if you're going to sell these, you have to take in consideration your labor. I started cutting all these pieces yesterday, and I get really, I'm not super excited about doing the same thing over and over again, so I like to work completely outside of the box and in total artistic freedom. And it looks like I'm missing, here we go. Here's my 4 1 1/2 inch, and here's my 4 1 3/4. So I'm going to demonstrate for you how to paddle on the, I'm sorry, that was my 1.5 on the 1 3/4. And these are going to be our middle bar, okay? So this is going to be our longest, which is why we only have 2, because we're just going to drop it in the middle before we start attaching our bars, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is get your bead out of the way. If you get your bead out of the way, then you're ready to go when you finish your earrings. And then if you cut all your materials in advance, you want to line up all your 3/4 inches, make sure that they're all the same height. And if you get all this done and get all this stuff cut in advance and make your ear hooks, then you can just kind of get on a roll, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I wrap this bead. And we're going to hammer the bottom first, and I want about a 1/2 inch hammer, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you're going to need, let's see, where is my, I use scrap wire. So I've got 2 and just shy of a 1/2 inches, so 2.5 inches of 18 gauge round scrap wire. And you can see all the dings in it, but it's not gonna matter. I use all my scrap as much as I can because we're gonna be tying it off and you're not gonna see anything. And then once it's oxidized and polished, it's gonna look brand spanking new. So the first thing that you wanna do is you wanna get a hammering block, and you wanna make sure that you're using a chasing hammer, okay? And then you can do it any way you want. I have a flush end, and I have the opposite of the flush, where I turned my cutting pliers, okay, my snippers, instead of cutting flush like we normally do, I turned them in the opposite direction because I was playing with it a lot to see how I could get the paddle quicker, right? So I would recommend that you get scrap wire if you've never hammered before and you practice a lot. So this is a chasing hammer, and as you can see, it's slightly domed. And again, if you're new to my channel, I am very detail-oriented for beginners. So I'm going to be giving you lots of tips and techniques to accelerate your journey in this magical ancient art of wire. Okay, so I'm going to start at the tip, and the first thing I'm going to do is just whack it once. And I just want to show you that right there. Can you see how we're already starting a paddle? And I'm holding my wire up a little bit, okay, in the back here. So I'm holding it up on an angle because I want to keep that paddle nice. And I'm just going to whack the bottom pretty thin. And you're going to see now why I cut it when I cut it, and I didn't flush cut it, is it kind of diamonds it out for me, okay? But we're going to be shaping that and buffing that. Now, because this is going to go on my bead, I did about a 1/2 inch of hardening and paddling. So I'm going to continue here. Let's see, you guys, if I don't go out of camera doing this. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to continue spreading that out on the bottom, and then I'm going to start working my way up the leg to about 3/4 to a 1/2 an inch. Then I'm going to, before I do anything, you can see how the shape is a little off. We're going to buff that out. I'm going to put my bead on because I want to make sure that the paddle is the same length as the other one. Okay, so I need to make it a little bit longer, and I'm going to be shaping that. So I'm going to come up a little bit more. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to hold very firmly, and I'm going to spread this side out a little bit more. And if it gets wonky, I'm going to show you a great tip or trick or technique. You want to hold this flat. So I'm going up the leg of the wire. And remember, this is, piece of scrap wire. So now I need to even that out. It's tilting off to the side. There's a couple of things that you can do. You can come down here and kind of pitch it if it will let you. If it won't, typically what I do is I get my 180 grit file, And I start, so this is the high side. So you can see that there. So I start in the middle just to flatten it out so that I can see the symmetry on this and where I need to file. And I'm going to come in over here on an angle. I was trying to look through the camera there. That's why I was missing my wire. And you just need to practice. Sometimes I get them right the first time, and other times it's really hard to do this under the camera because I'm not using equal pressure. If I was standing up, that would be a whole different deal. So anyways, I'm just going to shape this. And where this high side is, I'm going to start narrowing that down. So we're just going to correct that. And this is what I mean, why I'm not going through every single wire, because it's a lot of wires, you guys, is that you're doing the same thing. You're going to paddle out each and every wire, and you do not make your loops until you've paddled, polished, and buffed every piece, and then made sure that each one is the same height and length. So it's just making some subtle adjustments. And it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So now I'm going to get my buffer. And this is what's going to really clean it up. And you can take off a lot of high and low sides. And you want to hold your wire. So again, this is for beginners. I'm sorry, you guys. Let me drop this down. There we go. You want to hold your wire so that you don't jackknife it. And I'll show you here in a minute. Because this is going for the bead. We're cleaning it up pretty good. I got a high side here. That's what I mean. It's just really time consuming. If you used a 16 gauge, it would be a little bit more of a heavy earring, but it's easier to hammer thicker wire. And it just takes some practice. Okay, so I've spent enough time on that, and I'm going to see if I've hammered up high enough so that it's the same length as the other one. That looks a little long, so I'm going to pull it down some. Now, how I can compensate for that, I'm going to show you here really quick, a really cool little trick. See how this one's a little bit shorter by about 1 millimeter? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just file these down. And then I'm going to take that top off. And then I'm going to match them up again. And that looks pretty good to me. So all I'm going to do is just come in here and buff where I made some sharp edges with the file. This is why we want to get our bead out of the way. So again, everyone, and please, if you have any questions, ask me. It's really not hard. It's just time consuming because you're hammering on a lot of wire. So anyways, now I'm going to show you how I'm going to make the bead, and I'm deciding on my front, and that's going to be my front. So I'm going to come up about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. And since this is going to be my front, I'm going to bend this towards me. Then if you're not used to using 6-step bell making pliers, I'm using the number 1 on my plier, and the bend is away from me. The 1 is facing towards me, and I'm going to push this wire up and over, and then I'm going to swing it around. And I'm going to show you how to straighten this really easy. You just rock it. If you see my wrist, I'm rocking that wire up. So you should have this. Then I'm going to get my pliers, And I'm going to use 2 sets. I'm going to hold the neck. So I'm going to give you guys lots of techniques here. And I'm going to wrap this around 4 rotations. So let me see what we got here, because this is going to be my front. Here's my front on both of them. So I'm going to squeeze this in, really cinch it down. Then I'm going to cut it on the back. So I'm going to come really inside that. Then I'm going to get my needle nose and I'm going to cinch that in. So now we have our 2 little beads that are going to hang in the middle. There's a way to show this to you. And it's obviously not going to hang on its side of the hoop. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our hoops. And I've already made one because I mentioned this is very time consuming. So let me get the wire. So the wire for the hoop, I have 3 inches. And as I mentioned, per the materials, you can use 3 to 4. But because I'm using so many petals, and I'm using more petals on this one, I don't want it to be a really big hoop. So I used the number 11 to wrap my wire around my ring mandrel. So let me get that and I'll be right back. Okay, you guys, before we do the hoop, I wanted to, these are the 2 center wires that are going to drop in the middle of each hoop, right? So I wanted to make sure that I show you, these are the wires that are 1 3/4 inch and you're only cutting 2. Is the way I buff and support it. So if you notice, there's a little gap in between so I don't jackknife my wire. And then I wanted to show you how to make the loop, just in case for beginners. I really want to give you some detail on that. So let's see, I just did that one. So after you've paddled your ends and buffed and polished, you want to line them up and make sure that they are the same length. So you line them up next to each other. Having a hard time lining them up next to each other. Let me just push both paddles down. There we go. So those are even. So what you want to do is, all you want to do is take your 6-step bail making pliers and you're just going to use the number 1. But what's important is that your wire needs to be straight so that your paddle hangs straight. See how those are hanging so nice and straight? So you want to make sure that when you put this down that your wire is not got a bend in it or anything, and that it's a straight piece of wire. Now, when I get my 6-step bell making pliers, and I can see that this is actually going off, so let me give you another technique. You want to go up and down the wire with wide-jawed flat nose, just to make sure it's nice and straight. I actually saw this just with a very gentle curving, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to take my number 1 on my 6-step bell making pliers. And if you've never made loops before with these, you always want to make sure that you can't feel the wire sticking out between the 2 barrels. This will keep symmetry for you. Now you want to make sure that you're on an even plane before you roll your pliers back. So I'm going to roll them towards me, and you want to make sure that you're keeping an even plane of that wire being straight. So you see how straight my wire is? And then I'm keeping my finger up here and I'm just rolling into it. So there's one. And here's the others. So I've got all my wires ready to go. And now we're going to make our earring. So let me just roll this again. And just make sure you can see that you're keeping it on an even plane. And here's my second one. So these are my 2 middle wires, and I just line the sizes up together, okay? So I've got them all lined up together. And that way, when I'm ready to drop them on my loop, my ear loop, I can. So let's get those out of the way, and let's work on the earrings. So as I mentioned, we're going to make this loop. I used the number 11 on my ring mandrel. If you're a beginner, I would recommend that you mark the middle, okay? So that you can just keep an eye on your symmetry, but there's a very easy way around that, and I'll show you that in a minute. So here's my number 11, and I'm just kind of gauging my eye here, and all I'm gonna do is push these 2 wires over the ring mandrel. So here's a technique that I just showed everybody the other day on earrings I made. I made some 3 hoop earrings. If you find one side is longer, all you're going to do is push it over to meet the other one in the middle. Isn't that cool? So now you have symmetry, and you have your 2 hoops. I'm going to get these out of the way. I sure hope I'm giving you guys enough detail. Now the rest is just dropping all your paddles onto your earring. So it's really, again, just all the labor. You know, it's just super time consuming, you guys. But it will make such a cute earring, and I can't wait for you to see how these are going to turn out. So I'm going to hammer one more time. I'm going to line these up. Want to make sure that they're the same. So this is a cutting mat, and it is 1-inch squares that these earrings are sitting in. So the circumference of these earrings are 1 inch all the way around, and I'm just lining them up here. Then I'm going to put them together. See how we're doing here? And they're close. I'll snip those when I'm ready to roll them back, okay? So let's go ahead and hammer. So I'm going, now first, before I do that, sorry you guys, because I'm doing this all on the fly. I want to see how far down, because I decided I'm not going to put beads in between. You could, but I just decided I'm not. But I do want to run beads down, and that is not a bead. I don't know what that was. Down, so here's a tip. So that you know where to hammer, how far do you want your beads to start, right? Because once you hammer, it's likely the bead is going to stop where the hammering ended, okay? So I'm looking at that. I know I'm going to have all of my little paddles hanging from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it where I want to stop hammering. And I think right about there, because I think I want to run beads all the way down. So I'm going to center this on my board. And I'm going to get a Sharpie. And I am going to mark. I'm going to put this bead at the 1/2 inch mark. So now I know it's at the 1/2 inch mark. So I'm just going to push that bead up and out of my way. And that is as far as I'm going to hammer. Right where those marks are. I'm not going to come up any higher than that. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I now know what the measurements are. So I'm going to mark at the 1/2 inch mark. And that's where I'm going to hammer to. So let's get busy hammering. I'm going to texture these so that they're not perfectly flat and smooth. And how you're going to do that is you're going to use the opposite side of your chasing hammer. And you want to start tapping on the outside as you're holding your loop very firmly, okay? You tap on the lip of the wire. I'm not tapping dead center. Then I'm going to tap on the inside lip. And this is traditionally called a hammered look. So there's the one with it, and there's the one without it. Isn't that pretty? So we're just texturing it, and it hardens the earring. So again, I'm just going to tap on the outside lip. And then I'm going to come on the inside. So if you notice, I'm turning my hammer in a little bit. So it's coming off that lip. So now we have these adorable 2 textured earrings. Now all we're going to do is put them together. So you see, I know I keep repeating myself. I probably sound like a broken record, but it's just all the labor. There's so much labor. And I'm one for just, I do everything with artistic freedom. I can't draw, so I'll show you guys what I did yesterday. I used, I just was playing with the wire. This is a dinosaur bone, and I didn't connect anything. I had one single piece of wire, and I thought, well, let me make a loop in the middle and then bring it around and start a bail, and I just ended up with this. This is what brings me a lot of peace, and I just feel so good when I can just play. So that I'm just explaining myself. I don't know why, but you all can forgive me. Okay, so let's go. Let's put our earring together. So the first thing we want to do is get our 2 longest, which is our 1 3/4 inch, and we want to drop those in the middle. And you're going to see why I didn't want big hoops, because these are going to be long, fun earrings. So we're going to drop those in the middle. And the same thing over here. And you want your loop obviously away, or you don't. That's up to you. Now I'm going to get my 4 1 inch, because I wanted a lot more bars on this one. And I'm going to drop one on this side and one on this side. Oops, did I go the wrong way? Doing this backwards so I can't see. Whoops. That's all we're doing, right? So we've got 2 1.5 inch on the sides. That's all we're doing, everybody. That's why I said it's really beginner friendly. It's just super easy. It's just getting all that other stuff done. So we've got this so far. Now we're going to get our 4 1 1/4 inch. And we're going to drop one on each side. Isn't that pretty? It's going to look a lot better with more paddles. So that's all we're doing, is we're just putting it together. Now I'm going to grab my 4 1 inch, and I'm going to drop a paddle on each side. Isn't that cool? You could put beads in between, y'all. I just decided not to, but you do whatever your sweet mind tells you to do. Now we're going to grab the 8 3/4 inch, and I wanted to double up on those on the side just to give more fullness to the earring. So here's my 8, and I'm going to do 2 on each side. I just wanted more fullness. I thought it would make just a really cool feather effect. And we're going to be done before you know it. So there's our first paddle. Isn't that pretty? Just so pretty. How can I lay this more flat for you? That's our first paddle. See, and you could add more paddles all the way up the earring if you wanted. That's just too much of the same thing for me. Haha. So, anyways, that's all we're going to do. Then we're going to clean up the ends, and we're going to add our jump rings and our ear hooks and our beads. So it's that simple. So there you go. Here's our 2. Let me turn the camera. So here's our 2 earrings. those beautiful flared out paddles. So now all we're going to do is add our bead and our jump ring. Now I want to make sure that my legs are even. Now here's where you're going to put your beads on. So I'm going to drop a bead and see what I think. And that's too small. That's why I said you want to kind of set yourself up. Here we go. So I'm going to drop the bead now. So you want to set yourself up to make sure that your beads will slide down. Oh, that's going to look really cool. Now it's just depending on how many beads I want, right? So let's start with 5 because I'm not big on even. See what we think of that. Boy, you could bring those all the way up, you guys. And let's do 5 over here. And it doesn't have to be copper beads. It could be 2 or 3 or even 4 millimeter. I thought these beads for this was a little big, but it certainly grabbed your attention, didn't it? So let me show you what I'm talking about. So these, I believe, were 4.5 millimeter copper beads. So they're significantly bigger, or even 5 millimeter. I didn't measure them. I just stuck them on there. Now, you could also, I'm always going to give you inspiration. I'll do this other one off camera. Is you could also wrap half round wire all the way up the legs. How many do I got there? 4 and 5. So look how cute that is. You could keep going and going. This is what I was saying about the paddles. You could just keep adding more paddles, but you could really keep going. But I think I'm going to stop there. I don't know. Should I do 6? Let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking I like the 6 better than the 5, so I guess I take it back on the evenness of it all. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to do this one, and then we'll close off our earrings. And I will be right back. All right, now I got my 6 beads on each side. So now we're just going to make sure everything's lining up. And I may later, you guys, because I'm looking at this, I may bring in more wire. I'm always going to give you inspiration. As I'm looking at this, I was thinking about adding more wire in here. And these will match, we roll them back from the longest paddle, about 2¼ inches in length. They'll be perfect, long, fun, dangly earrings. So I'm going to even these up. Just a smidge. Let's see how these are doing. Oops, I lost a bead. So let me count. That's 6. That's 6. Oh, I lost them over here. Ooh, darn. I'll be right back, you guys. I'm dropping all my beads. I should have known better. Okay, so before I do that again, I hate chasing beads. I'm going to go ahead and close these off. So this is the back, right? Because your loops are facing towards you, right? So all I'm going to do is get my number 1. And I'm going to roll these back. And again, you want to stay on the same plane. So make sure that you've got your plier in line with your wire. And this is going to shorten this earring up. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And now my beads don't have a chance to roll off anymore. And I'm looking at where my line is. And I'm turning my work over. And I'm rolling it down. Okay. So here's what we got. Then I'm going to bring these together. I'm going to squeeze them together, and I'm simply going to do that as I'm pushing So I'm pushing back and forth. I'm rocking the wire as I'm squeezing it together. So we have this. Isn't that pretty? And you don't have to. You can have a good gap space in there if you want, but I don't. So same thing on this one. I'm going to roll it back. And I'm going to roll this one back. And I might open that up a little bit more because I was just looking at the jump rings that I cut. Just want to make sure that's flush. So let me take a look. I think I want to open this up just a little bit because I got a pretty big jump ring there. And I forgot that I was thinking about that when I was cutting all the materials. So we're almost done. So we're going to set our beads. So I'm going to rock and push. Here we go. Now we're going to put our jump ring in. Let me tell you the size jump ring that I cut. I believe I did the number 5, and I did. So I cut myself 2 jump rings using the number 5 on my 6-step bail making pliers. And now I need to lock these up or I'll drop them, and it won't be the first time. And I'm looking for my flat nose because this is where you're going to hang your bead before you close off. So you want to make sure you got front. So I know this is front because the cut piece of wire is in the back. I'm going to run this through the earring first. Then I'm going to lift it up. Make sure I got my front. And then I'm going to run it through the other side. And it's just going to give a totally different look to it. You're going to see here in a minute how cool it changes the design. Then I'm grabbing 2 flat nose pliers and I'm going to rock these together. Then I like to take my flat nose and squeeze really hard. Now look at how cool that is. And I'll flip the camera around here in a minute. So there's our one, and then the same thing over here, and we're done. I really hope you enjoyed that, everyone. I would love your feedback. Okay, so I'm just going to drop the front. Then we're going to put our little ear hooks in. And I'm going to rock them together and let them rub up against each other. Then I'm going to get my flat nose and I'm going to squeeze really hard. And look at these adorable earrings. Let's get some, I really like these. These are fun. Let's get some ear hooks on here. If I don't have any pre-cut, then I will, where's my box? I thought I made them, but I didn't. So let me get 20 gauge wire is what you want. And I'm going to cut two inches. Won't need that much, but that's how I like to do it. So in reality, I'm going to cut myself 4 inches of wire. Then I'm going to cut them in half. And I would do something really decorative, but I promised myself I would keep this within the hour. So I'm going to just cut the flush end. And I'm going to pinch off this end. So I am going to do something a little decorative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my plier, my needle nose, and right on the tip, I'm going to roll it in. So you have kind of like a little U shape, right? Then right where that tip is, I'm going to cut it just a little tiny bit. And then with my flat nose, I'm going to use my stub nose, I'm going to cinch that in. I'm pinching it off. All right, so let's do the same thing on this one. And I notice my wire isn't very straight. So I'm just going to bend that tip over. Till I have my little U. I'm going to cut that tip. And that one I cut a little short, so I'm going to rock this down just a little bit more. I won't be able to cinch it in. And then just with my stub nose, I'm going to cinch it in. So we've got 2 of these. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll it just a little bit. And I'm pressing down really hard. I'm flattening it. So let's see if we've got a matching set here. I'm going to roll this one in just a little bit more. I thought I did on that one too much, so. Okay, so it's like a quasi-spiral, right? Then all I'm going to do is get my 6-step bell making pliers. I'm going to line my 2 wires together. You can do them one at a time or together. And I'm going to have the number 1 facing me and the little swirl in the tip of this wire facing away from me. So the swirls are hugging against the number 2. And I'm just going to take them equally. I'm just pressing and bringing them all the way up and over. And we've got this cute ear hook, right? So this is where we're going to anchor the earring off of, right down here. And then I'm going to get my number 5. I like big hoops. You can make them any size you want if you want a small. And then I'm going to have the 5 facing away from me and the loop that I just made facing towards me, okay? So this is coming towards me. The number 5 is going away from me. You want it lined up and resting against both those barrels. And then I'm just going to push it around. This is a short earring. I should have cut it 2 1/4, but that's okay. Some girls don't like long backs. So all I'm going to do here is just kick this out. So we got this really cute ear hook. And the same thing here. So that's just not, I tend to like long backs on my earrings, but not everybody does, and that's okay. They will still work. So I'm lining this up. You want to make sure that it's an even plane. So you can always look down to make sure that this isn't on an angle. You don't want this pitching off to the left or the right. Then all I'm going to do is just bring it around. And then I'm going to kick that little leg out. So we got these 2 adorable earring hooks. And then I'm going to hammer. And we will be done. Putting all my tools out of my way, you guys, so that I can see what the heck I'm doing. So I'm going to get my hammer. And I'm going to hammer at the arc. So I'm holding very firmly. And just going to smash that down. Then very gently, I'm just going to tap that flat. And then very gently here, I'm going to flare out that edge. And the same thing on this one. Then I'm just going to very gently tap that so it's nice and flat. And we're just hardening it a little bit. And then I'm just going to flare out that end. Now, if you've been watching me for a while, you all know I like to file the ends into a point. and then I buff them, but the tumbler will literally soften any point down to a micromillimeter. So I'm not worried about that. And all we're gonna do is set our earrings, and then I'll turn my camera around. So we dropped them in there. Get my flat nose and squeeze these together. Aren't those the cutest little ear hooks? Really cute. They just look great when you're looking at a gal from the side. And the same thing with this one. And we'll turn her around. So here, let me see if I can get something like a tweezer. Here we go. And then I'll turn my camera. Here are earrings, y'all. Aren't they just the cutest? And they're so fun and frilly. And you could add double jump rings here. You could add more beads. But aren't those the prettiest things? Let's get that big old yellow thing and all my stuff on my workstation out of the way. They're so cute and flowy. They've got a great swing to them, you know, and these are beautiful Red River Jasper. So thank you so much, everyone, for being a wonderful, magical part of this ancient art of wire with me. As you all know, I wish for you all that you wish for yourselves. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second. And have a magical, wonderful wire wrap day. Bye for now.